ever get that feeling, that like someone's kind of nudging you, like into doing something you don't really want to do?
Oh, yeah.
Not like forceful,
Yeah.
but just kind of like this pressure.
Right, right.
Well, today we're going to dive deep into dark psychology
Okay.
to see how those sneaky manipulation tactics actually work.
Yeah.
And we're using William Cooper's book to kind of guide us along the way.
Great.
So think of this like your crash course in spotting manipulation and building up your defenses against it. I love it.
Absolutely.
So what's interesting is that, when we think about dark psychology,
Yeah.
I think we often think about like villains,
Yeah.
like in the movies,
Oh, yeah.
but it's actually happening
Right.
all the time
All the time, yeah.
in everyday life.
In ways we don't even realize.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with the basics. What exactly is dark psychology?
So Cooper defines it as the study of the shadow side of human behavior. So it's really about how people use psychological techniques, whether it's for manipulation or control or even harm.
Okay.
And the thing is, sometimes it's intentional
Right.
and sometimes it's completely unintentional.
Wow.
But either way, it can be really damaging.
So it's not just about like spotting an evil mastermind.
No.
It's a lot more nuanced than that.
Exactly. It's about understanding those subtle tactics and recognizing the signs
Right.
so you can really protect yourself. And sometimes it's even about recognizing those tendencies in ourselves,
Oh, interesting.
We've all probably used some of these tactics without even realizing it.
Oh, okay. That's a little unsettling.
Yeah.
But also fascinating.
It is.
So let's get into some specific tactics. Cooper talks a lot about gaslighting,
Yes.
which I have to admit sounds kind of terrifying.
It can be, especially because it's so subtle,
Yeah.
Gaslighting is all about making someone doubt their own reality.
Yeah.
It could be twisting facts or denying events or even flat out lying, all to make that victim question their sanity and become more dependent on the manipulator.
Oh, that's messed up. And the scary part is if it's done gradually, you might not even realize it's happening
Right.
until the damage is done.
Imagine if someone is constantly telling you you're remembering things wrong or that you're overreacting.
Right.
Eventually, you start to question your own perception.
Oh, totally.
And that self-doubt, that creates a breeding ground for manipulation
I see.
because you're less confident in your own judgment.
So it's like a slow erosion of your self-trust.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the long-term consequences can be really serious, like anxiety, depression, and difficulty trusting others in the future.
Wow.
So it's really important to be able to recognize those signs early on.
Okay, so gaslighting is definitely one to watch out for.
Mm.
What about this mirroring tactic?
Yeah.
As creepy as it sounds?
It can be, yeah. Imagine someone is mimicking your behavior or your speech patterns or even your values,
Yeah.
all to build this false sense of trust. And at first, it might feel flattering.
Oh, yeah.
You think, oh, I found someone who really gets me.
Yeah.
But that's all part of the manipulation.
That reminds me, have you ever met someone who agrees with absolutely everything you say?
Oh, yeah.
It's like they don't have their own opinions?
That's a classic example.
Yeah.
They might mirror your hobbies, your political views, even your body language.
Oh, wow.
All to create this illusion of a deep connection. And once you're comfortable and validated,
Yeah.
bam,
That it starts.
then they start to use that connection to influence your decisions.
So if someone seems a little too good to be true, maybe they're just a master manipulator in disguise.
It's definitely a red flag. You really want to trust your gut if someone's behavior just feels inauthentic or if they seem overly eager to just agree with everything you say.
This is all starting to feel like a psychological thriller.
Okay. What other tactics should we be aware of? Well, emotional blackmail is another common one. It's all about using fear or guilt or obligation to pressure someone into doing something that they really don't want to do.
Oh, I've definitely experienced that, especially with like friends or family. Like, you don't want to lend someone money
Right.
and they give you that guilt trip.
Exactly. It preys on our desire to be loved or accepted or even just to be seen as a good person.
Right.
They might say things like, if you really cared about me, you would.
Yeah.
Or I thought I could count on you.
Yeah. And because, we don't want to disappoint them or hurt their feelings.
Right.
We cave, even if it goes against our better judgment.
The key is recognizing that it is a form of manipulation.
Right.
And that you do have the right to say no without feeling guilty.
Right.
Cooper emphasizes that it's so important to set boundaries in all relationships.
Yeah.
And that includes family and friends.
So how do we start to protect ourselves
Yeah.
from all this? I mean, it sounds like we're surrounded by potential manipulators.
Well, the first step is simply being aware of these tactics.
Okay.
Knowledge is power, right?
Right.
Now that you know about gaslighting, mirroring, and emotional blackmail, you'll be more likely to recognize it when it happens. It's like having a radar for manipulation.
Yeah.
And remember, Cooper's not saying that we should become like suspicious of everyone.
Right.
It's more about developing healthy skepticism and trusting your gut.
Okay, so if something feels off,
Yeah,
it probably is.
it probably is.
That's a pretty good rule of thumb.
Pay attention to those subtle cues, those inconsistencies between words and actions.
Right.
If their behavior doesn't match up with their words, or if you consistently feel uneasy or uncomfortable around them,
Yeah.
that's a red flag.
Okay, so awareness is step one.
Yes.
But what about actually protecting ourselves?
Yeah.
I mean, knowing about these tactics is one thing,
Right.
but how do we actually stop them from working on us?
Well, that's where emotional resilience comes in. Cooper talks about it as like a crucial defense against manipulation.
Yeah.
The more you understand yourself, your values, your triggers, your strengths and weaknesses,
Yeah.
the harder you are to manipulate.
So it's like building up this psychological shield.
Think of it as like developing a strong sense of self.
Right.
When you're really grounded in who you are and what you believe in,
Yeah.
it's so much harder for someone to sway you with their tactics.
Okay, that makes sense, but how do we actually build that resilience?
Mhm.
It sounds kind of abstract.
There are a lot of practical things you can do.
Okay.
Mindfulness exercises, for example,
Okay.
can help you become more aware of your thoughts and emotions in the moment,
Okay.
which can be really helpful in recognizing when someone's trying to like push your buttons.
So instead of just reacting emotionally,
Right.
you can like take a step back and actually assess the situation objectively.
Exactly. And assertiveness training can be really empowering too.
Okay.
It's about learning to communicate your needs and boundaries clearly and respectfully. Right.
Without being aggressive or passive.
So it's like finding that sweet spot between being a pushover and a jerk.
You got it.
Yeah.
It's about advocating for yourself while still being mindful of the other person's perspective.
Okay.
It takes practice, but it's such a valuable skill in any relationship,
Right.
especially when dealing with potential manipulation.
Okay. Those are some great tips. Anything else we can do to kind of boost our resilience?
Cooper also talks about the importance of having a strong support system,
Okay.
surrounding yourself with people who are honest and trustworthy and supportive can help you stay grounded
Right.
and give you a reality check if you're ever feeling manipulated.
So basically like having good friends who call you out on your BS.
Exactly. And who will support you when you're feeling vulnerable
Yeah.
or unsure of yourself.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
This makes me wonder, are there any specific situations where we should be extra vigilant about manipulation?
One area where manipulation can be just rampant is online.
Yeah, good point.
Think about all the targeted ads.
The like clickbait headlines,
Yeah.
the social media influencers who are trying to sell you something.
Yeah.
It's a constant barrage of persuasion tactics.
Oh, totally. I never really thought about it that way. But it's true. I mean, we're constantly being bombarded with messages that are designed to influence our behavior.
Exactly. And online dating is another area where manipulation can be a real issue.
Oh, for sure.
People often present these idealized versions of themselves.
Yeah.
It can be hard to know who's being genuine and who's not.
So we need to be extra cautious about, who we trust and what information we share online.
Absolutely. It's about being discerning,
Right.
not just blindly accepting everything at face value.
Good point.
Remember, you have the right to privacy,
Yeah.
and you don't have to divulge personal information just because someone asks for it.
This is all really making me think about the power of saying no.
Yes,
It sounds so simple,
it is.
but it's something that so many of us struggle with.
We are often conditioned to be agreeable, right?
And to avoid conflict.
yeah.
But saying no is such a crucial part of setting boundaries
Right.
and protecting yourself from manipulation.
But what about those situations where, like, we feel pressured to say yes,
Yeah.
even if our gut is screaming no? Like, what if it's, like, our boss asking for a favor?
Yeah.
Or a close friend who needs our help?
Those can be tough.
Yeah.
But, Cooper emphasizes that it's still important to honor our own needs and limits.
Right.
He suggests practicing saying no in low-stakes situations
Oh, okay.
so that it becomes easier when the stakes are higher.
So, like, building up our no muscle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And remember, it's totally okay to take some time to think things over.
Yeah.
You don't have to say yes on the spot.
Right.
It's perfectly acceptable to say, let me think about it and get back to you.
Yeah, that's such a good reminder.
Yeah.
Because we often feel pressured to give that immediate response.
Right.
But sometimes we need to just step back and really assess the situation.
Before making a decision.
And remember, saying no doesn't have to be confrontational.
Okay.
It can be done with grace and empathy.
Right.
It's about prioritizing your own well-being
Yeah.
while still being respectful of the other person.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's not about, shutting people down.
Right.
It's about setting those healthy boundaries
Exactly.
and protecting ourselves from those who might try to take advantage of our kindness.
Well said. It's about being assertive, not aggressive.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's about recognizing when it's time to just walk away from a relationship that is consistently manipulative or harmful.
Okay. That's a heavy thought, but an important one.
It is. But remember, this deep dive isn't about making you paranoid or suspicious of everyone.
Yeah.
It's about empowering you
Yeah.
with the knowledge and the tools
Right.
so you can navigate relationships with greater awareness
Yeah.
and make choices that are aligned with your values.
Yeah. This has been incredibly insightful. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on human behavior.
Yeah, it really is fascinating,
It is.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface of this whole dark psychology thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's so much more to explore, but hopefully this has given, kind of a good foundation.
Yeah, for sure.
And remember, knowledge is only powerful if you actually use it.
So true. Okay, I have to ask, what stood out to you the most from all this? Anything that surprised you about dark psychology?
You know what really gets me?
Yeah.
It's how often these tactics are used unintentionally.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's not always like, some Machiavellian scheme.
Right.
Sometimes it's just people falling back on these unhealthy patterns of behavior.
I hadn't really considered that before,
Yeah.
but it makes sense. It's like
Yeah.
we all have these shadow sides, right?
Oh,
And sometimes those darker impulses just kind of come out,
they do.
even if we don't mean them to.
Yeah. And that's why self-awareness is so important,
Right. If we're not aware of our own tendencies,
Yeah.
we're more likely to fall into those patterns without even realizing it.
So it's not just about protecting ourselves from others.
Right.
It's also about understanding our own potential for manipulation.
Precisely. And that's where, Cooper's emphasis on emotional resilience really comes in.
Right.
The more we understand ourselves, the better equipped we are to really handle those challenging situations and to make conscious choices that are aligned with our values.
Speaking of emotional resilience,
Yeah.
can we unpack that a little bit more? Like, what does that actually look like in, everyday life?
Well, imagine someone tries to gaslight you,
Okay.
making you doubt your own memory.
Right.
If you have good emotional resilience, you're less likely to fall into that trap of self-doubt.
Right.
You might say something like, I understand you see it differently, but I'm confident in my recollection of events.
Well, it's about standing your ground,
Exactly.
in your own judgment.
And it's about not taking things personally when someone tries to manipulate you.
Oh.
Remember, their behavior is more about them than it is about you.
That's a good point. It's so easy to get caught up in the drama
It is.
and feel like we're the problem.
Right.
But, sometimes it really is about the other person's issues.
Right. And that's why setting boundaries is so important.
Yes.
It's about protecting your own energy and well-being,
Right.
not letting other people's negativity drag you down.
I mean, this is all super helpful.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, I'm still a little wary,
Sure.
How do I know if I'm being manipulated or if it's just like a normal disagreement?
That's a great question. And honestly, there's no easy answer.
Right.
But, here's a clue. How do you feel after interacting with this person?
Oh,
Do
interesting.
you feel drained or confused
Yeah.
or like you're walking on eggshells?
That's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah.
I guess if the relationship consistently leaves you feeling bad, it's probably worth taking a closer look.
Absolutely. Trust your gut,
Right.
If something feels off, it probably is. And remember, you always have the right to walk away from any situation that feels unhealthy or unsafe.
Well, this whole deep dive has been a real eye-opener.
I'm glad.
I feel like I have a whole new set of tools to kind of navigate the world with more awareness.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
And remember, this isn't about becoming paranoid or seeing manipulation everywhere. It's about empowering yourself to build healthier relationships and live a more authentic life.
Well said. So, to our listeners out there, if you're feeling a little spooked by all this dark psychology stuff, don't worry.
Yeah.
It's not about, living in fear.
Oh.
It's about knowing your worth, setting those boundaries
Yes,
and trusting your instincts.
absolutely.
And remember, we all have that potential for both darkness and light within us.
We do.
The key is to just, be aware of those shadow sides
Right.
and make those conscious choices
Exactly.
that align with our values.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay true to yourself.